All right, back here to Pat.
Governor, and I'm reading from the press release that you distributed. According to this, you're going to be directing the EC4, the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council, to create an environmental justice committee which will solely focus on the issues that have impacted the most vulnerable residents for decades. Perhaps you could explain that in more detail. What type of due process? Is that going to be criminal-based, or is that what type of powers in terms of enforcement are going to be incorporated into a relatively nebulous description?
Well, I don't know who takes that. I'll let this side of the team. But the idea, obviously, is spelled out that we believe that in all areas that equity and talking about the people who might be most impacted on any issue, and in this case, climate is addressed, and that's the reason putting the committee together. But Director, Terry, you might want to come to the mic though.
Thank you. Thank you for the question on the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee that was discussed last night. It's in the press release as well. We, as an EC4, will be working to pull that together at the governor's direction. What we really want is feedback. We want input. We want to understand that we are taking strategies and taking actions that benefit all Rhode Islanders, and not just the people that show up at our typical meetings. So we want to make sure we're reaching out into all the communities. Now, you mentioned enforcement, and enforcement isn't something that's tasked to the EC4. It's typically tasked to the agencies that are part of the EC4. So, for instance, I'm the director of DEM. We have certain enforcement authorities for things like clean air. When topics come before the EC4, from environmental justice groups or from other community representatives that indicate that there's a problem there, then the individual agencies within the EC4 will use their respective authorities to take those on.
Just a quick follow-up. That's exactly what it could be concerning to people, that in fact the DEM will be able to expand its rather broad enforcement technique, if you will, powers into areas that are more of a social justice issue, perhaps more the purview of the Attorney General's office. Thank you.
I think environmental justice is something that we all have to focus on. It's clearly an issue for DEM. It's an important issue. The governor's direction really focuses on climate justice, which has a huge amount of overlap with environmental justice. A lot of the things are the same. We do work with the Attorney General's office on these things, and it's a coordinating council, right? So we are looking across the whole of state government to make sure we're coordinated on our approaches. And with this particular new direction from Governor McKee, we're going to make sure that we're getting the input from communities that have traditionally not been represented well in our discussions.
When a state agency starts using the term executive powers or setting up a justice commission, that screams to me of an additional channel with which the state of Rhode Island could prosecute people. Now, the DEM doesn't have, it's one thing if you're chasing koi ponds, and the DEM has a rather interesting track record, not under his administration, but a rather interesting track record of aggressively pursuing individual homeowners, aggressively, and much less so brownfields and things like that. So I got to tell you, I got to ask about it. That's what I want to ask him about.
Okay.
You know? Okay.
No, let's make it.
Yeah,
I want to touch base with some of the other people there too. So.
Yeah, no, I understood. Coalition Radio Network, we're here after the governor's press conference with Acting DEM Commissioner Terrence Gray. I got that right, I think. I finally got that right. I'm hoping that they drop the acting at some point, but that's an aside. One of the concerns we raised was the notion of a commission being created within the Department of Environmental Management that would pursue issues of environmental justice. And that's not a quote, and we'll get a little bit more into a deep dive after this interview. But ultimately, I had questioned, and I would like to see a little further guidance from the acting commissioner on the type of powers that this organization is conceived of, because it sounds awfully nebulous. What are your thoughts, sir?
Thank you. So just to clarify a couple of things, what we're talking about is an advisory group, an outreach group that would provide information to the EC4, which is the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council. The Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council is a group of agency directors like myself that are all involved in responding to climate change. It's transportation, it's the Coastal Resources Management Council, it's energy resources, all the related agencies. All we're looking for is increased dialogue. A lot of times we talk to a lot of our partners, our like-minded organizations, and we don't have a chance to talk to people that are in low-income, non-English speaking communities. And a lot of these communities are on the front lines of climate change. So we want to hear their opinions, and we want to make sure that we're getting a cross-section across the Rhode Island population in terms of the work that we're going to be doing.
No, fair enough. And I think we can specifically allude to the South Providence community that's been unduly impacted by trash collection and recycling efforts in the Port of Providence as a primary example where clearly those folks are owed justice. But my question is, y'all could have hearings with them anytime you want. And I'm sure that the organizers of that community, who do a great job, by the way, would respond immediately. Will there be any referral process, and when will we see regulations about, or the proposed regulations for this proposed commission? However, when it comes to referring issues for criminal prosecution within the DEM's broad powers or the Attorney General's office, and will there be incorporated as well, due process and an opportunity for respondents to be heard at the same time?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. But the simple answer is the EC4 doesn't have authority to promulgate regulations or to directly enforce regulations. The Climate Coordinating Council is exactly that. It's a coordinating council of the different agencies in state government that have authorities and responsibilities that have given to them through state law. And as issues come up, the individual agencies, my agency being DEM, may take actions on areas within their mission. And I don't see any change in that. I don't see any expansion of that. It's a dialogue, and it's designed to get a more informed discussion on how we respond to climate change.
Fair enough. Final question. What type of private industry, trade group, community representation will be there in addition to folks who might have issues with climate justice?
No, that's a great question. And like I said, we want to have a dialogue that represents all of Rhode Island. I've been reaching out personally to the different chambers of commerce and building partnerships with them. We have great relationships with different industries. I know all the agencies within the EC4 have relationships with the different industries that we work with. For me, it's the environmental consultants and engineers. And, we're taking the industry perspective as well. So I think it's a balanced approach that we need.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Acting DEM Commissioner Terrence Gray, participating in today's announcements and, as always, being very responsive. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.